Hey everyone, welcome to the Therapist Mom with me, Dr. Jodi. Tonight I'm flying solo. Lily's not here, and we have no guest. And also, this is a special show because it's pre-recorded ahead of time, which is unfortunate in some ways because that means I'm not interacting with you live as my audience, and I so love to do that. So ahead of time, I've gotten some questions on social media, so I'll at least be sort of interacting. And please feel free, if you're on YouTube or LinkedIn or a Facebook, please put comments in anyway. Ask your questions because after this premieres, I will go back and I will answer all of your questions for you. So tonight is going to be a really interesting show, I think. I think it's a topic that is near and dear to all of our hearts. Setting personal boundaries. So as a psychotherapist for over 28 years, I've really seen the importance of personal boundaries. And so I'm going to give you all of the whys. I'm going to give you all of the things I want you to think about so that you could set awesome personal boundaries in your life and in your relationships in a way that will change and up-level what you can do and what you can see for yourself, or what is possible for you, how safe you feel, how good you feel. And so let's dive right in before we delay too much longer, because I want to give you all this information. I have notes all over the desk today, and I'm going to really try to deliver all those to you. First, we're going to talk about why it's important, why boundaries are important for your relationships, and not only close relationships, but all of your relationships. And your relationship with other things, like your relationship with your schedule or your relationship with an organization. All of those things do need boundaries. Your relationship with yourself, all of those things need boundaries too. We're going to go over the 5 kinds of boundaries that I want you to think about and implement, and then the 2 categories of boundaries to know which is needed when, right? It's not like a prescription, like this is the kind of boundaries that you need and do this and then you're set, because everybody has different needs. We're different people. People are different. And you have to think and be aware of yourself enough to know what your needs are. And they change, right? Our needs change all the time. Our attitudes, our feelings, our emotions, they change all the time. Our relationships are never staying the same. So boundaries, of course, have to change as well for those things to work and for us to adjust to those times. After that, I'm going to tell you the one trick that you need to know that's going to change everything in your life about your relationships. And finally, I'm going to demystify people pleasing, because you may not know that people pleasing and boundaries are intricately connected. And this is something that you really have to know about. All right. So why? Why do we need boundaries in our life? Why do we need boundaries in our relationships? The number one reason why we need boundaries in our relationships is because it provides safety. Right? Biologically, we need to feel safe to feel okay. And that's so that we survive, right? So that's so if we was danger around, that we could do something about that danger and we could get out of the danger and fix ourselves. So safety is essential to how we feel and how comfortable we feel in our world and in our life. And so having boundaries and relationships that you can count on provides that safety. Also, it gives us some personal space. You know, we only have so much bandwidth. We are limited creatures. We can't be awake all the time and not sleep, right? We can't do everything. We have limits that we do have on ourselves, and we have so much bandwidth that we could put into all of our things in our life, including our relationships. And if we have boundaries set, that gives us that personal space to be able to decide what we want to use it for. So the next why is respect. If you have boundaries in relationships, that means you have mutual respect in those relationships. And that's really important. So you're respecting somebody else's boundaries, they're respecting your boundaries. And when you feel respected, you feel worthy. It's so connected with our sense of worth. And our sense of worth is the core to everything that's important to us. everything that's going on in our life, we're judging it through our sense of worthiness. Am I okay? Am I belonging? Am I worth it? Am I loved? Everything that goes on in our life, we're reading it through this idea: are we worthy or are we not worthy? And when we have respect, we have that confidence and security that we are worthy, at least of that person's respect, right? And those relationships feel really, really good to us. So that's awesome. All right, next, the other why is understanding. We understand what to expect in relationships if there's boundaries. If there's clear boundaries for us and other people respect our boundaries, we have a real understanding of what to expect in those relationships and how to move forward. And with that security, we don't have a lot of bandwidth trying to figure that out. And we're out there doing things that our soul wants to do. We're out there living our purpose and living our life mission instead of like hyper analyzing every single little thing that's going on other than that. And last but not least, it influences our sense of belonging. That's what I was talking about when we're talking about respect and worthiness. Do I belong? Am I worthy to belong? And having boundaries in relationships, especially your close ones, because you're not going to have, not every relationship is going to have good boundaries. Some of that is up to you. But your close relationships, if you have people in your life who care about you and put you first and are decentered and not centered all the time, they're going to respect your boundaries. They're going to know them. And you will feel that sense of worthiness and love and belonging. And our soul really wants that. Our soul really wants that biologically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally. We need to belong because that's what we need to survive. That's what we feel biologically that we need to survive because we're social beings and we're not able to live in isolation. Actually, as a therapist for so long, I've really started to notice that isolation is one of the worst things for our psyche, for our psychology, for our emotions. Being isolated makes us feel so bad about ourselves because we're stuck in our head thinking about all that negativity, and so that thumbs up comes automatically sometimes when I gesture. So if we're isolated, people who are isolated have symptoms, and the symptoms are connected to like anxiety and depression. They want to withdraw. They're afraid of other people. They don't care if they get better. They're so sad that they don't even care or don't assume they can get better, and they don't care if they get better or not. This is not a symptom of depression. It's a symptom of isolation. And when people get out of isolation, that changes. It's an issue with their dopamine. When you're isolated, your dopamine's not triggered, you're not interested, you're not sparked or charged up about anything, and you start not caring about getting charged up, not caring about anything at all. And so when you have a dopamine issue like that, it's usually because you've been so isolated, because humans are social beings, and so we need that to know that we're okay and belong in a group. So boundaries are important. Now we've established that boundaries are important. All right. I want to demystify something. I'm going to do a little side note here about vulnerability, because this is something that we don't understand too much. A lot of us are afraid of being vulnerable. We're really afraid of being vulnerable because we feel like if we're vulnerable, it's dangerous. And perhaps you've experienced many things in your life and many times or many relationships in your life that if you were vulnerable with them, they would take advantage of that. In those contexts, it was dangerous. But it wasn't the vulnerability that was dangerous. It was the danger that was dangerous. So if you're vulnerable in situations that aren't dangerous or aren't risky, it's completely different, right? You get closer to people, you feel seen, you feel loved, you feel cared about. But if you're vulnerable in a context that is not safe, it's not safe. So we have to distinguish and know the difference between who we can be vulnerable around and who we can't. So let's talk about the boundaries in good relationships. Maybe it's important to think about good relationships and hazardous or not safe relationships, non-secure relationships. I don't want to say good and bad because then there creates a duality because there's everything in the middle. There's some relationships that are good, but there's still some things you have to navigate and negotiate and try to figure out. It's not like some relationships are good and that's just it. No, they're hard work. You have to work really hard about it. But when you're having a good mutual relationship where there's mutual respect for each other, of course, we're human, we're going to make mistakes, but those relationships often have boundaries that are clear. They may be implicit. Implicit means like you don't state them out loud, but they're clear. Like, so maybe you're somebody who likes to go to bed early and your bestie never calls you after 9 p.m. because they know that you're sleeping, right? They know that that's not a good time for you, or that you would wake up and that would, upset you. And if they didn't have to, they would not call you after 9. That might be an implicit boundary in that relationship, just because they know you so well and they care about you that they are going to respect something that they know is important to you. And sometimes they have to be outlined. Like, do you ever have a friend who meets you late every time you're supposed to meet each other? Yeah, I have too. And you might have to explicitly explain that is a problem and that won't be okay. And you have to set some limits. And so we're going to talk about this. Pretty soon we're going to go to a commercial break, and then we're going to talk a little bit further about the 5 kinds of boundaries that I want you to know about and think about, because it depends on the context what you want to think about. Before we go, though, I do want to tell you about my book, Anxiety, I'm So Done With You. It's a teen's guide to ditching toxic stress and hardwiring your brain for happiness. I talk a lot about boundaries in here because it's so important for how we feel about ourselves. And our depression and our anxiety is so important to how we feel about ourselves, right? And our relationships. We're social beings. Our relationships are important. So, of course, if I want you to feel better, you need to pay attention to this stuff. So you could go ahead to my website if you want. It's jodiaman.com. And you could grab yourself a copy of the book, or you could sign up for my newsletter, and I'll let you know. We're on Mondays, every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern on Bold Brave TV. We go live. So if you're watching this as a recording or you're listening to it as a recording, come on and join us live on Mondays at 8 p.m. And go ahead to my website, jodiaman.com, if you want to sign up to get reminders. But I will see you shortly after a short commercial break. And we are back. You are listening or watching The Therapist Mom with me, Dr. Jodi. I'm so glad that you're here tonight because we're talking about setting awesome personal boundaries. This is so important in all of your relationships and all of your contexts. So I hope you have a pen and paper and you're taking notes tonight, because I'm delivering a lot. In my time as a psychotherapist, this is one of the biggest questions that people ask me: how to set boundaries. I have a lot of viewer questions tonight because this episode is actually pre-recorded. So I'm not interacting with you in real time. If you're putting comments on, I will get back to them after this show premieres. But I'm going to still read some questions from some viewers, hopefully in the segment here, because I think this is something that a lot of people wonder about, they worry about, they're trying to navigate because they know the importance. And if you're just joining now, go back and listen to the last segment where I really talked about the importance and the whys of setting boundaries. And right now I'm going to go into the 5 kinds of boundaries that I want you to think about. And the first kind of boundary that I want you to think about is physical boundaries. This is pretty obvious. We need to have physical space from dangerous situations, or from situations that are not serving us. And that doesn't mean everything. I mean, we're human. This world is crazy. There's a lot of crazy things that happen, and we have to build up a robustness to handle some things that are out there, else we couldn't go outside, right? We couldn't walk around a town or anything if we couldn't handle anything. So we have to have a little bit thick skin, but mostly physically, you want to make decisions with where you are and what context you put yourself in so that you put yourself mostly in safe contexts. And if it's uncomfortable, that's okay. But if it's unsafe, you have to kind of start to question, why am I continuing to be around this person who treats me bad? Why do I continue to be available for that? And so you want to make sure that you are, and sometimes you're at the wrong place at the wrong time and someone attacks and it wasn't your fault, right? You didn't put yourself there. You didn't ask for that. You didn't do anything. But in general, we are every day thinking about, am I making safe decisions about where I'm putting myself physically? The second kind of boundary I want you to think about is time boundaries. How much time and bandwidth, pretend I did a thumbs up. How much time and bandwidth do you want to give somebody if there's not a mutual exchange? Sometimes we give something to somebody. Say we work in a customer service role. Of course, we're getting paid to support the customers in the business. So we're getting paid, we're supporting the customers in the business. It's a give and take. The customers are customers to that business. So that is the give and take to us and to the business. There are some relationships that it's mostly one-sided. And if you're giving in those relationships that's one-sided, you have to be conscious about knowing that that is the plan. That you know that you're giving that time, that energy to somebody that you're not getting it back from. And then you have to make sure you're filling yourself up from something else if you're doing that. You only have so much. And so there is sometimes people out there, we're going to talk about this in the second half of the show. There's people out there that really want to take your energy. They are graspy and they feel like they don't have enough. They feel out of control and they try to grab your energy. They grab your time. They grab your attention. And maybe they're worthy of it. Maybe they're poor souls and you really feel bad for them and you want to do that, right? You're a sensitive person, you're a caring person, and you feel so strongly about wanting to do the right thing and wanting to care for the person, have the other person feel cared for. And maybe that would heal them. And unfortunately, if you keep feeding that need for their control or to grab or to keep doing that, you're really maintaining that behavior of theirs and you're not actually helping them. And it's only when you know that you're not helping them get better overall, you're not helping them move forward in their life, that you can stop being available for that. Stop letting them just zap all of your time and energy. So the first one was physical boundaries. The second one is time boundaries. The third one is conversational boundaries. That's setting limits about the topics that you feel comfortable people talking about. If there's topics that are controversial or topics that are offensive and you don't feel comfortable talking about those things, you can set boundaries in your relationships. Either go away from them, don't talk to them anymore if they don't respect that, or whatever. Because this is the thing, you can set boundaries all the time and people may or may not follow them. And that is what I'm going to cover. I'm going to tell you what to do in those kind of situations. Physical boundaries, time boundaries, conversational boundaries, and number 4 is relationship boundaries. So these are in your close relationships, boundaries that you've discussed and negotiated. Boundaries and parameters around relationships can be negotiated in mutual relationships and good relationships that make you feel good, that uplift you, that give you a sense of belonging, that make you feel loved. In these kind of close relationships, you are navigating and negotiating boundaries. And in every pair or group, they can have different parameters that they want from each other and expect from each other. I work with couples. I've worked with couples this whole time as a therapist, and each couple can negotiate the parameters around their own relationship. It's not like this is what you should do as a couple. I don't believe in that because everybody has different needs. The 5th one is personal boundaries, and this is what we're going to go into a little bit. These are rules. This is a little bit more about your relationship with yourself. your respect to yourself and how worthy that you're treating yourself. You might think of yourself as worthy or unworthy, and usually we think of ourselves as both. Usually we're arguing in our head about whether we're worthy or unworthy. And whatever you feel, if you start to, first of all, you're worthy, you're a human in this world. I don't care if you've made mistakes. I don't care if you've done bad things. I don't care if if somebody hurt you, you are worthy. None of that happened because you weren't worthy of love. And yes, if you did do something wrong, it's important for you to repair those relationships that you might have hurt, but you can repair them. People have done unspeakable things and repaired those relationships. So you can. So I just wanted to establish before we started that you are worthy, and you're worthy of treating yourself with respect. So the last of the 5 kinds of boundaries is personal boundaries. How you set boundaries that feel comfortable for you, that you need. So maybe it is like going to bed at a certain time, or being off your phone for a little while to have a break, or you want to exercise every day because you know mentally you feel better if you do. Those are boundaries that you set with yourself that you could respect or not respect. And definitely you'd feel better if you respected them. And you need to be a little bit aware. So if you wanted to be like, how do I be aware of what my needs are? What kind of questions you want to ask yourself? I'm here for you. So come on over to my website again, jodieamon.com, jodieamon.com. And in my videos, look up setting awesome setting awesome personal boundaries. Look that up. Find the blog that goes with this video, this show tonight. Look for the thumbnail with this shirt on. It says setting awesome personal boundaries. And I'm going to give you a download of this paper of how to think about boundaries. This is an exercise that I do with my clients, and how to think about boundaries, because sometimes we're just kind of going through life and surviving and just trying to survive and doing everything. And we just don't have the consciousness to stop and think. So we're responding to all this, people disrespecting our boundaries, or ourselves disrespecting our boundaries, us not setting boundaries, us being questioning whether we need to set boundaries or not. And we need to stop for a moment and give ourselves some time to really ask ourselves some questions and get some insight about what our needs are. So come on over to my website, jodieamon.com, do a search. There's a search in the corner. Search for setting awesome personal boundaries, and look for this video. Underneath the video, I'm going to have this downloaded paper that you could download and use it as an exercise. And I think you're going to really love it. It has you, there's thinking about what your boundaries are, how to negotiate boundaries, how to think about them, how to set boundaries that aren't crossable. And pretty soon we're going to go to a commercial break, but after that we're going to talk about that. This is that one thing that I promised you, that one thing that's going to really change your life and all your relationships if you understood this. How to set boundaries that cannot be crossed. We're so busy asking other people to respect our boundaries. We're so busy trying to explain why we need them, trying to get them to understand us. And some people, they got their own agendas because they have their own fears. They have their own graspiness and their need to satisfy their own dysregulation. And they don't care about your boundaries if they're in that state. And so I'm going to tell you the one thing that I really, really want you to know, to understand, so that you could go forward. And after that, we're going to answer viewer questions. That is going to be really fun. So come on over to my blog here and download this exercise for yourself, because you're really going to love it. Let me take one question. We have a little time before commercial. Why do I take things so personally? So Janice said, why do I take things so personally? Well, Janice, you take things personally because you're a human with a big, beautiful heart. You're a sensitive soul, and you take things personally because you're human, and these things that people do hurt. We're so busy of thinking that we should take the higher road, or we should be too evolved to be hurt about stuff. But when people hurt us, it hurts, right? It hurts. And then when we judge ourselves and say, we're not supposed to feel this bad, then we double down and we think we're really overreacting because we're not only feeling hurt, but we're judging our hurt and it exaggerates our feelings. And if you're like, well, I want more about that, go check out my last week's show, because last week I talked about what to say when you talk to yourself, and I go into how our negative self-judgment exaggerates how we feel and how bad we feel. All right, we're getting ready now to go to a commercial break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about the 2 categories of boundaries. And I'm going to tell you that one thing that you have to do that's going to change your life. Hello and welcome back. You are watching The Therapist Mom with Dr. Jodi. I am so glad that you are here listening to this episode. Tonight, you are watching a pre-recorded, or you're listening to a pre-recorded session if you're here live during my time. The regular show time is Mondays, 8 p.m. We stream live on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. So fun. You could actually, on a Monday night, ask me a question live, and I will interact with you. And that is so fun. We have a lot of cool things coming up in the next couple months. So come on over to my website and sign up for reminders of the show. So you could hear about what the topics are, who the guests are, and you could be reminded to come on live. Pretty soon we're going to open up a call-in feature. This show is going to be so fun. And what we're doing is we're helping people learn how to navigate this modern world, because our brains evolved for a different world than we're living in right now. And what happens is it's increasing our depression, our anxiety, and we have to know how to read the world and how to understand that, especially our young people, because they have it even more. With having a smartphone in their hands since middle school, this generation, Generation Z, has seen anxiety and depression to the likes that we have never seen. So impactful on their lives, and really worrisome. If you're a parent, if you're an educator, or if you are in this generation, Generation Z, this show is for you, because we are going to tell you how to feel better. It is possible, even though the world's crazy, it is possible to feel better, because it's how you think about it and how you think about yourself. In this episode, we're talking about personal boundaries. And we just spent the last 2 segments, really going over the whys of them and the kinds of boundaries. And in this segment, we're going to talk about the 2 categories. If you are around somebody who's not respecting you, or is dysregulating you, or triggering you, whatever word you want to use, if you're around somebody, there's 2 categories of things that you could do. One is get away. Don't be physically available. This goes where I love this like thumbs up thing that comes. I'm Italian, so I'm gonna gesture, and so this thing's gonna come up, and at the funniest times too. So so get away physically. You don't have to rise above or be evolved enough to like not have to be triggered by somebody. That's not your job. Get away from them if you can't trust them. Get away from them if they're not safe. Don't put up with that kind of thing, because you don't have to. And then the second category is energetically don't be available. So either don't be available physically. So some people have to leave jobs because they have really toxic work environments, or a toxic boss, or a coworker, or something that just is really messing up their life and messing up their mental health. And sometimes you can't leave that job, or you don't want to leave the job. You love the job, but there is this person that's really difficult. So you could either take physical space from them or take energetic space from them. So the physical space, really understandable. We get it. You're just going to take physical space from somebody. Yeah, get out of there. But there's sometimes, maybe it's a family member, maybe it's a family party or a holiday, and you can't get away, but there's that difficult family member that you have to deal with. How do you energetically be unavailable? Glad you asked. There's two ways you can think about this and practice it. One is by putting an energetic shield around yourself. So you do this with a guided visualization. So you might want to close your eyes. We could practice this right now. Close your eyes and think about a shield around yourself, just a little bit outside your body, totally covering yourself. And inside is filled with light. It's filled with safety, filled with comfort and power, like empowerment power. And usually I like to think about that symbolized by light, like a bright golden light helps me symbolize that kind of power. And it's shooting out from the inside of me all directions. And then I have this shield around me. And I like to think about the shield as being like a two-way mirror on the outside. So good stuff could come in. I could still see the world and interact with it and give what I want to give to whoever I want to give to. But anything negative comes and hits it like a mirror and just bounces right off or just reflects back. Doesn't come into me. I'm protected. So first of all, I have this light coming out, vector from all sides. Nothing can come at me when this light is so powerful coming out. This is a visualization. But when you visualize, our imagination is the room to how our world is created, how we think about things. So if you, in your imagination, picture yourself in this light coming out from you from all sides, you feel really protected. Instead of staying home and staying in your room because you can't deal with people, then you isolate and you feel worse. But if you do this guided visualization and push that light out from all sides and think about the shield around you, then you could go out and know that whatever happens just hits off the shield and just drops. It does not come into your heart. You could decide what comes into your heart. And of course, if there's close relationships in their families, you're going to be hurt because you're human, right? There's nothing wrong with it. It's not you're doing it wrong because you're hurt. You're hurt because you're human and someone hurt you. But you can have compassion for yourself. You don't have to stay in that hurt. Okay, so what was that? So not being there, not being available energetically, especially if you know ahead of time that you're going to go into a context where there's that person who always is like passive aggressive or always like makes these jabs at you, and you know you're doing it. You consciously know you're going into this thing. You want to go to this event, but there's this person that's there, and you don't want to not go. Sometimes maybe you decide not to go. But sometimes you decide that you want to go, even though you have to deal with this person, so you could prep for it. Do that guided visualization. Imagine whatever they say and practice. You're going to practice in your imagination, having them say those things that they say and that just falling off you. Then you're almost like inside your head, you're like, oh, poor you. Poor you just said that and it just fell to the floor. You know, like rethink the whole situation, because in that position, in your mind, you're in a position of power instead of a position of victimhood, and that stuff won't hurt you as bad. What happens usually is when you go to these events and this other person's there, you're kind of afraid of them doing something, and of course they're going to. And then you're just going to be a victim of what they did and feel horrible about it. But if you prep for yourself and you're like, I'm not available for that. That is about that person. It's not about me at all. And when they say stuff, I'm just going to let it fall. Wouldn't that be amazing? And because you're experimenting and you plan this ahead, like you're in a position of power. You're in a position of empowerment. So whatever they do to you won't feel the same as it did before. If you're like, I'm helpless, I just have to put up with it. That's a whole different attitude. And that attitude is going to affect how you feel about what they do and how you take it into your heart. And so when you are unavailable energetically, like I'm not really available for someone to criticize me. I'm not available for that. I'm thinking I have to practice this a lot myself, because I think there's a lot of times I'm available for some people hurting me and I get really defensive because I'm human. You're not looking for perfection here. You're looking to help yourself feel better. And you're also looking to help the people around you feel better about themselves. Usually people attack is a cry out for love. When people attack or they say those barbs or they judge you, usually it's because they are feeling miserable and it's overflowing onto you. And so if you don't then be a victim and then whatever, you're not perpetuating that for yourself or for the other person. So that's pretty cool. One little tip I like to give is I call it the energetic eye roll. If you're prepared for an event and you know this person's there, inside your head, you could do an eye roll. So that's how I want you to think about it, that you're like, talk to the hand, but you're not doing it physically because that's just going to trigger them and upset them. And then it's going to be harder for you. You're doing it inside your head. Did you ever have a teenager roll their eyes at you? It's so insulting. You don't want to do that out loud because it's going to upset the other person. And this person, since they haven't been very nice to you, they're probably a person who does not like boundaries set with them very much. You know what I'm talking about? And so you don't want to trigger them. So you're doing it inside. But inside, what it does is it automatically, energetically puts that field up so nothing comes in. Nothing comes into your body. Because once it's inside, you have to process it so much more and try to let it go and try to get rid of it. If you don't bring it in, so much easier. So much easier. Okay, so what's next? What are we going to talk? Let me take a question here. What if somebody, this is from Sarah, what if somebody reacts badly to a boundary that you set? What if somebody reacts badly? Oh, that never happens, right? It never happens. Why would somebody act badly to a boundary that you set? People act badly to boundaries that you set because they don't like boundaries. They feel controlled by those boundaries. And they are used to, they may have grown up in families where they're like, boundaries are bad things. They're mean. And so they feel very threatened that you're rejecting them if you have a boundary. They don't think about boundaries as safe. They are so safe. They're so good and secure in relationships. But people who are graspy, who are maybe like they have tendencies to be like an energetic vampire. Maybe many people call these people like have narcissistic tendencies. I don't like to label people, so I'm trying to do a description of behaviors. They do not like when you set boundaries with them. They don't like it at all, so much so that they will make fun of you. They'll tell you you're overreacting. They'll tell you how ridiculous it is. Whatever they can do to help you stop setting boundaries with them. They do that on purpose so that you stop. They don't want you to do that. And this is another question from Hanny that goes with it. Like, how do I tell somebody in a way that they'll understand? Like, how do I tell somebody about a boundary in a way they'll understand? You can't control how somebody understands something, and they have an agenda about that often. And so you could the best thing you could do is offer an idea instead of complaining. Like, ask for what you want instead of complaining. Offer a good idea instead of complaining. That helps. We should do a whole episode on that, actually. But you can't control how somebody else understands because they have their agenda that I need to control or I might lose a relationship. And so those relationships are really, really hard. And we're about to go to the last break of the show. And when we come back, I am going to tell you, because it's very pertinent to these kind of questions, I am going to tell you, I'm going to tell you this one thing that you need to think about to how to set boundaries, especially with difficult people like that, especially with people who don't respect them or don't like them or don't feel comfortable with them. They could be good people. They could be really difficult people. But you really need to know this. So I will see you after this last break and we'll bring it home. Hello and welcome back. This is the Therapist Mom Show with me, Dr. Jodi, and we're wrapping up the episode, but I still have some really good take homes. The best of this whole show is going to be in this last 5 minutes here. This is what you have to know. Some people will not respect your boundaries. We've talked a lot in this episode about mutually deciding on boundaries that you could have in relationships that you're close to. But there's this whole bunch of people in your life that don't care about your boundaries because they care so much about their own emotional regulation, and they do have some trouble regulating their own emotions. And so they like to use power tactics or power over you, which equals gaslighting. So if you set boundaries with these people, they freak and they make you feel worse. And sometimes you're like, that wasn't even worth it. Why did I do that? Because now I have this whole trouble and I have to defend and blah, blah, blah. And it really is really difficult. These relationships are hard, and you may want to question if you're in them. It doesn't mean get out. Any relationship like that, get out. Sometimes this is just a little bit of immaturity or not understanding or not having insight. And some people will be able to take good feedback and get better and better. If you're in a relationship with somebody who is able to take feedback about this and get better and practice and improve, then that's okay. And there's sometimes it's like your boss or a coworker and you're like, I could deal with it. They're not my inner circle. They're not my life membership. I'll just have to deal with them. And then there's some people that it's like, this is supposed to be my significant relationship, like the witness of my life, and they're doing this to me all the time. That's probably not a good relationship to have. Probably not really helpful to you. And I have to tell you, like, if you are dealing with somebody who has these narcissistic tendencies, the real selfishness, use power tactics to get you to not set limits with them, you want to watch. I have some videos out there about, relationship red flags. I think that you should watch how to break up with somebody who is narcissistic. Those kind of videos will be helpful for you to watch. So you could come on over to my website, jodieaim.com, and just in the search red flags, search how to break up, search for this video if you want information, because I promised that on this blog post that goes along with this, will have a download for you. And this is a setting awesome personal boundaries exercise that you could do with yourself to really help you understand what are your needs and what you need to do. Okay, we're almost done here, but I really want to give you the gem of the whole episode. And the gem of the whole episode is, we always think about boundaries as things that we have to set and tell other people what to do, how to respect us, what we need. With people who you don't trust, you really need to set the boundaries that people can't cross. Right? So if you can't be like, please don't call me after 9. I'm saying a simple one because I don't want it to be a triggering example. So but if you say, please don't call me after 9, please don't call me after 9, or please text me before you call me, whatever limits that you set, please tell me before you stop by at my house. Whatever limits you want to set with somebody, if they're not listening to you, if they don't listen, if you know from the past they haven't listened, or they didn't listen because you've said it a number of times already, then you need to set a limit that nobody could cross. Like you need to either block them, or not come to the door, or not answer the phone, or like if they're late all the time and you say, if you're late, I'm going to leave. Like you need to set a boundary that people can't cross. You can't depend on the people that don't respect your boundaries to listen and change, right? That's like that, that joke, that definition of insanity, keep doing the same thing and expecting something different, right? Yeah. No, you don't want to keep doing the same thing and expecting something different. You want to expect that they're not going to do that, and you want to set boundaries that they cannot cross. Got it? All right. We never got to people pleasing, and so I will make another video. If you are watching this recorded version somewhere, come on over to my blog, jodieaim.com, and I will have a video below where I talk about people pleasing, because I promised it in this episode, and I didn't get to it because we're out of time now. But I am so grateful for you for watching. I know that you're going to get tons out of the show, so come on, join me live on Mondays at 8 p.m. on Bold Brave TV. Come join the conversation, and let's make this world a better place. See you next week.